Welcome back to another episode of Joyful Mate. I'm your host, Anthony Hartcher, the Joyful Journey Mentor, and I'm sharing this episode from Chaninga, which is in Fort Portal, or near Fort Portal, which is in Uganda, which is about 4 hour drive. Well, it's probably only 80 kilometres, but it's a hard drive. No, it's a bit further, I think, from Kampala. So Kampala's the city and Fort Portal's west of Kampala, and it borders on the Congo. So I'm walking through the paddocks of the lake crater, which is at Chaninga. So really enjoying my stay over here, and I just want to share some insights around what I've observed with the Ugandans. And certainly one is appreciation and expectations. So with the Ugandans, they appreciate more things, and it's simply because the expectations are that life is what happens, and I shared that in a previous episode as the title, Life is What Happens. But the Ugandans, so for example, they don't have these expectations of dream homes and things like that. They live in very basic dwellings, and they appreciate having a dwelling, appreciate having some sort of security around them at night and a shelter to rest. And that's a simple human need, is to have shelter and feel secure, and they appreciate the little that they have around that, and anything above the simplicity of what they have is really appreciated. So I've seen this in giving shirts away, giving my shoes away, giving some, it's only it was probably around 50 US cents, and just seeing the joy, when I was giving this 50 US cents to this lady, she actually responded like she won the lottery. And yes, 50 US cents is a lot more to them than us, of course, but it's not significant. It's not like really winning the lottery. However, they respond and show appreciation in the way that they've won the lottery, because they have really low they obviously have certain expectations, but they see more life as it is, as opposed to projecting as they wish it would be, or projecting a fantasy as life should be this way. And I think in the Western world we get carried away with fantasies and through Hollywood and things like that from an early age, and we then hold these expectations and then think, I'll be happy once I've accomplished that, or once I've achieved my dream home, I'll be totally fulfilled. And these dream homes are, really wishes and fantasies, and not really well thought out as to whether they really need that or want that. And so I think when you have those sort of unrealistic expectations on life, then you miss out on the small things, appreciating the small things. And this is what the Ugandans are really good at doing, is appreciating the small things in life, because life is so simple. You go to bed, at sundown, and you wake up with sunrise, and you work in the fields, and you work to live and survive. And it's not about accumulating money or accumulating possessions. It's more, work is a way of life. So they don't have a detest for work or a dislike for work, because they see it as a way of life, and they embrace it a lot more and enjoy work a lot more than what I observe in Western world, and particularly what I observe living in Australia. So I think it's really important that if you have these lower expectations on life, that you'll find more things to appreciate and find more joy and satisfaction and contentment with life, because you're not having a fixation on fantasies or projection as to this is the way life should be, and if it's not that way, then it's unfair. And whereas the Ugandans accept life as it is, and life is what happens. I like that quote from John Lennon. And then they find more things to appreciate. They appreciate the simple things, small things, and there's more satisfaction and contentment when you're constantly noticing and appreciating everything around you. And this is what I've observed with the way the Ugandans have responded to gifts. And the incredible thing is that they certainly give forward. I had a number of interactions with Ugandans where they gave me essentially what they had, which was they'd picked some sweet potato from the fields, they'd cooked it, and they peeled it for me and shared it with me. And so they very much are giving people, but without any expectation of receiving. And I think that's wonderful in the sense that they give forward and they don't really have an expectation of getting back, but they know that by giving or doing things that help others, that incorporates connection. And when you feel more connected, you feel that you belong, you feel more significant, and there's more meaning in life. In a sense, you feel at one with everyone around you and everything. So I think that's really important. The other thing is giving forward and just giving what you have and sharing it with others, because then there's that connection, and through connection we secrete oxytocin, which makes us feel more connected, and that really helps our mental health. It really helps our level of satisfaction with life, and with more satisfaction, or you certainly feel more fulfilled and feel more joyful, and I think that's really important, to feel more connected. So they develop that connection simply through sharing what they have. So I think that's another good thing, is just not having expectations of receiving, and just and seeing that, giving is just a way of connecting with others and feeling connected. And that's what the experience was. We're just sharing a sweet potato together, and it was really, really felt really connected, and I felt that they accepted me for who I was. That's probably another good point, is there's certainly less judgment. I think very little judgment. It's really just embracing people for who they are, and they very much do that. That's the Ugandan way, is very non-judgmental. And I think what really helps with that non-judgmental approach is that they live quite stress-free lives because of the philosophy around Pula Pula, which I shared in the previous episode. And that's taking things slowly and allowing time to allow things to build and grow. It's very much, I guess, the farming way as well. You plant, you don't reap straight away, but you plant, and it's a bit like giving. When you're giving without, I guess with planting you are going to receive, or you may not receive actually, because the crop may not yield. So there's probably not the expectations that you'll definitely get a yield, but if you keep doing what works, that eventually there will be some success. And I think that's the way we should see life, is that if we keep taking one step at a time in the direction that we want to go, is that something will happen in time. It might not unfold exactly how we wanted it to, but at least we're progressing forward. And I think that's a really important point for mental health, is that you feel that you're making progress. It's when we stagnate is where we tend to, we basically, when we're not growing and we stagnate, then we feel like we're not moving ahead and moving forward, and that can be really difficult. It can result in feeling depressed and things like that. And I think this is the Pula Pula philosophy, is that with building it slowly, you're taking step forwards. You'll eventually get there, but you're not fixated on the outcome. It's more that, you're making progress towards something bigger, and that you can appreciate the journey and appreciate the little things along the way, which I mentioned at the start, is not having expectations or unrealistic expectations. I think that's the big thing. I think and I think really when we fixated on a certain way, then if it doesn't happen that way, then we feel let down or dissatisfied. And I think if we allow things to be and just connect with the journey and embrace the journey and allow life to be what it is, as opposed to projecting fantasies as the way it should be, then I think we can certainly find more things to be joyful for, and we can embrace every moment of every day, as opposed to seeing work as a grind. And as I mentioned, work here is just a way of life. It is life. Whereas in the Western world, we constantly, when we start work, we're thinking about retirement, and then we think, put all our eggs in that basket, is that I'll be happy when I retire. And often the majority of people find, when they're retired, they're very unfulfilled. Whereas the Ugandans don't see there's no expectations on retirement. In actual fact, they see work as work and life together, connected, and that you work your entire life. And there's no such thing as retirement here, because the minute you stop working, there's no income. But the other thing, I think they find that work is connecting, and we've seen that through the pandemic, that when we were working from home, we felt very disconnected, very isolated, and that resulted in many mental health concerns. Whereas here, going to work and working is a way of connecting with others and enjoying each other's company, and that's very much what they do. So they work all day, very long hours, from sunrise to sunset pretty much. So it's pretty much 12-hour days, but they enjoy the day. They embrace each other's company, and I think that's something we can take away, is that when we're at work, rather than see it as a grind and I just can't wait to retire and I don't like doing this, is just accept it. Like it's really work is life and life is work, and work has many positive attributes, and that's, I think, what the Ugandans embrace, is that you're doing it with others, you're building something bigger, you're connecting, you're having fun together and doing it, and they certainly enjoy their work. There's no doubt that they but I think the other thing that helps that is the expectations on them around KPIs isn't as great as the Western world. So I think that's another thing that I've really learnt, is that whilst KPIs can really drive progress, I think at times we set unrealistic goals around KPI, and it really drives a lot of stress in the workplace to achieve these unrealistic goals. A lot of the time, the super stretch targets and things like that. And those super stretch targets that everyone's trying to chase, that we ultimately often miss, certainly through my experience in the corporate world, you feel that you haven't accomplished something, whereas you've made progress. And the Ugandan way is very much embracing the progress and acknowledging the progress, as opposed to feeling let down that you didn't meet this unrealistic target. So I think that's the other thing around the workplace, is setting targets that are more sustainable and more that aren't so unrealistic, and then there's a feeling that you accomplish a whole lot more. And I think what we do in the Western world, well, this is certainly my experience, is that we have these unrealistic targets, we put a lot of work in, and then the company sort of stagnates because it just can't sustain that level of work intensity. Whereas the Ugandans don't have that high level of work intensity. It's less like, I see the Western world as very much having these pulses, like these huge surges of activity, and then a massive sort of low, or something like that. Or a period of long stagnation, because we can't sustain high levels of intense activity. As we know, when we're exercising, that those high intensity interval sessions, we can only maintain high intensity for short periods of time and not enduring periods. So I think they have a much more sustainable outlook on work, and expectations are realistic, or more realistic, more accepting. So I really, I think that really helps having a workplace that is less stressful and more enjoyable, and enables you to enjoy the journey. So there's a lot I've shared in this episode, but a lot of insights that have been circulating around my mind, and I really hope they've given you some insight. And till next time, please continue to share the Joyful Mate podcast with others that are looking to discover their joy, discover more happiness around them, more fulfillment. Please share it with others, because that's the whole ambition of this podcast, is to help everyone feel more fulfilled, more content, and more satisfied with life. So until next time, continue to joy up.